Hello everyone! So today I'm here with a book review of 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. This book review has been a long time coming, considering I read basically one or more books of his every single month last year, starting in March. And then after I read After Dark, I tried to start this, but I was in college and it just was not happening, so I waited until the summer to finally read this, and I read part 2 and 3 in like 4 days. It was a lot. But anyways, I'm here to talk about this book and my feelings on this book and basically everything. And yeah, I'm so sorry if this review is really long, because this book is really long. So there you go. But anyways, first off, I'm going to start with a non-spoiler section of this review, and then I'm going to get into a spoilery discussion. So if you guys did not know, this is Haruki Murakami's masterpiece of over 1,100, almost a 1,200 page novel called 1Q84, and this book is considered a dystopian, which personally I would not agree with that, because I think of dystopians as like futuristic worlds or future worlds that have gone to shit or overthrowing the government and stuff like that, or perfect utopian worlds. This book doesn't have really any of the aspects that I would think of as a dystopian, so I really don't know why people always describe it like that. This book is about a woman named Omame and a man named Tango who accidentally get sent to a parallel universe of their own. Yeah, I mean, I don't think any dystopian I've ever read has like little people crawling out of dead corpses of goats and people and stuff, and like lots and lots of like weird sex and like sexual abuse and stuff like that. Personally, I don't think of that as a dystopian. So, I mean, I could be wrong though, but I don't think of that as a dystopian. And no, I'm not joking about little people crawling out of corpses of goats. That happens like twice. Anyways, we follow a woman named Omame who is a assassin, basically. She has a very particular talent of finding a spot on the back of people's necks, which she can like put a little like needle into and smack on, and it kills them instantly. And she does this work for a woman that we call the Dowager, and basically she kills off men who sexually abuse women. But obviously her actual job is like a sports, like physical therapist kind of person. But yeah, she has a very interesting background. Like she ran away from home and her parents at like 11 years old. She's a little bit like heartless, if I'm completely honest. But yeah, she is definitely an interesting character. There was quite a bit of time where I didn't like her, mostly in the first part. There were just a couple of things that she would say and do that I didn't like necessarily love or agree with. Like, she kind of put down feminism and she kind of dismissed people being lesbians and stuff like that. But overall, she was a wicked strong, wicked awesome character who by the end I was rooting for, and I loved her. And she's a badass. I love her. She's great. And then we also follow Tango, who is a 30-year-old man he is a writer, but like he's never actually written his own book, and he works as a teacher at a prep school. And one day there is a young girl who submits her novel into his industry, and his boss is like, "This book is amazing. We need to make this into a real book." So Tango is the one who rewrites this story for the girl, because the girl is a little bit illiterate. So he helps her like kind of flesh out the book by rewriting it, and when they publish it, it becomes like a huge national phenomena, and everyone loves this book. But little does he and his boss know is that they're gonna get wrapped up in some pretty heavy shit for publishing this book. This story gets absolutely crazy. I'd say the first part is a little bit boring. It took me the longest to get through the first part, which is about 400 pages long. It took me probably a couple of weeks of just like constantly reading 25-50 pages. But then the last two parts, like I said, took me 4 days in all to read like almost 1,000 pages. It is such a gripping story after you get to a certain part, and it's amazing. Like, Haruki Murakami's writing style, I always say this, but his writing style is literally like candy to me. I just absolutely eat it up. He could literally be writing about nothing. He could be writing like 1,000 pages on absolutely nothing, and I think I'd read it, just because he knows how to use words, and it's amazing. And in this book, I was really, really impressed with his world building. Like I said, the first part's a little bit boring because you do have to get a lot of world building done, but it's like a lot of world building from the eyes of people who don't realize what is happening. And then in the second and third parts, we get so many questions answered and so much more world building that's much quicker because we already kind of know the setup. But the first part does definitely need to set it up. But this is the first book where like Haruki Murakami's world building is exquisite. Like obviously it's a huge book and you need a lot of setup to be able to understand everything that's going on. It was incredible. Like his world that he created in this book was outrageous. It was amazing. I loved it so much, and it just made me even more impressed with him because I've seen his writing in obviously all of his other books, but I've never seen this amazing world building. And obviously I'm not saying world building as in like a fantasy or dystopian world building kind of thing, because again, I don't consider this a dystopian, but he has to kind of world build his own type of reality, which is really, really interesting. Also in this book, like all of his other books, I must say this is a trait of Murakami's that I just love so much, is his character development. His characters are so fleshed out and just feel like real people. I must say Omame and Tango did suffer from Haruki Murakami main protagonist syndrome, which means they're a little bit like bland of people. Like if I met them in real life, I'd probably not be able to hold a conversation with them because although they both have wicked interesting stories happening to them and wicked interesting backgrounds, they are so bland and like not able to make decisions and like very like just like clear-cut focused people. They don't have that much to them, but the characters around them, like the side characters, are amazing. Like there is a policewoman in this book who I freaking loved her, and also there's a man named Yoshikawa, who we actually get to read from in the last part of this book, who I just thought he was so interesting and had such a personality. Omame and Tango, while they did definitely have a personality, they're just a little bit bland and not like that interesting of people, but like for some reason you still want to read about them. It's kind of weird. Haruki Murakami does that with all of his characters. Like all of the 10 books I read before this, 11 books I read before this, all of his like main male protagonists, I always say, are basically the same person. Like I always thought Toru Okada from Wind Up Bird Chronicle is like the same person as the unnamed narrator from the Rat series, but in this book, they definitely have a bit more personality than the unnamed narrator and Toru, but they're still a little bit bland, but still like wicked developed, if that makes any sense. But again, I was like the most impressed with the side characters. Like, okay, in quite a few of his books, like the books that I seem to like the most, he always has this character who is like a young girl who kind of like helps the like 30-year-old dude into like basically into the story. And in this book, that was Fuka Ari, who is my favorite character. I loved her so much. She is a young girl who writes the book that Tango rewrites, and she is adorable, and I love her so much. She is a young girl who ran away from home because her father is basically a cult leader, and she didn't want to be a part of that anymore, so she ran away. And I love her. She's such a precious little cinnamon roll. But overall, this book is just so fleshed out and developed, and I must say, personally for me, I didn't even notice the 1,000 pages after I was really into it. Like, obviously at the beginning you're like, oh my god, I still have 1,000 pages to go and I just read 200 pages. Like, most books I'd be almost done with by now. But like, after a while, you just kind of forget about the length and you just want to read. Like, honestly, I wouldn't have minded if this was another 500 pages just to get some answers, because this book definitely leaves a lot of loose strings. I said this in my Goodreads review, so I want to say it here, but one thing I absolutely loved about this book, because I love his like weird books and magical realism books way more than his contemporary books, I don't really like his contemporary that much, is the fact that this book makes literally zero sense. Like, going back and trying to explain this book to people is so hard because it makes no sense, but while you're reading it, Haruki Murakami makes it make complete sense. Like, that's what I love about his books so much. Like, I always describe Wind Up Bird Chronicle to people as, like, dreamlike, because, like, in your head, when you're dreaming, you're like, this totally makes sense. Yeah, I can fly, I can, like, eat this stuff, I can, like, turn my body inside out or do something crazy like that. But like when you wake up, you're like, that made no sense. Why did I think that make sense? And Haruki Murakami books are very much like that. Like while you're reading, you're like, yeah, I get it. Yes, this totally makes sense. But then when you come out, you're just like, wait, what? And that's just something I love about him. I know some people probably wouldn't like that aspect, but it's one of my favorite things about reading Haruki Murakami books is I just feel like I'm in a dream when I read his books, and it's amazing. Also, Haruki Murakami made a world inside of a world inside of a world inside of a world, and that blows my mind. Like, how did he do that? Now, before I get into my discussion and spoilery section, I do want to give a trigger warning. If you think that this is going to spoil anything in the book, don't listen. But I am going to give some trigger warnings because I thought of quite a few. Okay, so I'm giving a trigger warning for rape and discussion of rape and sexual assault because obviously the Dowager deals with quite a few girls who were raped and sexually assaulted. Domestic abuse and discussion of domestic abuse, murder, child abuse, cults and depiction of religion as a cult, guns, gun usage, and attempted suicide / discussion of suicide. So yes, if you guys think any of those things would be triggering to you, I am giving a warning for this. Okay, so now we are getting into the spoilery discussion of this book. Basically, this is just where I'm going to list off all of the questions that I had regarding this book here, because this book left so many unanswered little things to it that I want answers to. What the hell happened to Fuka Eri at the end? Like, literally, she goes away to the professor's house after she lives with Tango for a little bit, and then we never see her again and never hear about what happens to her. I just wanted, like, one sentence or a little bit just telling me that she was okay and, like, what she was going to be doing with the rest of her life, but we got absolutely nothing, and I just want to know what happened to her. She's my precious little cinnamon roll. Like, what happened to her at the end? Haruki Murakami, please tell me Fuka Eri's okay. You always do this to me. One part that I was, like, a little bit like, did this need to happen was Yoshikawa's death. Like, what the hell? Did he really need to die? Like, was that a thing that actually needed to happen? Because to me, he was cooperating completely, and I thought we could have gotten him on our side, like, on Omame and Tango's side. But, like, why did he have to freaking kill him? Like, that was so unnecessary to me. I was just like, okay. Also, did little people start making an air chrysalis out of him? Like, is he gonna be reborn? Like, we never get an answer to that. Like, we know that the little people start making the air chrysalis, and, like, it's gonna take a couple days, but after that we get absolutely nothing. And I'm like, excuse you, I need to know what happens. Like, is he getting reborn? Like, what happened? I need to know. My big question was, how was Omame and Fuka Eri connected? Because there was definitely a connection between those two, because there was no reason that Fuka Eri would, like, I don't know, like, I feel like they were just somehow connected, because they never really met each other, and, like, the second Fuka Eri leaves, Omame shows up in Tango's life, and I was thinking Fuka Eri might be, like, kind of representing Omame as a child, like, as a young kid, how Tango fell in love with her, like, when she was 10. I was like, is Fuka Eri supposed to be, like, a young Omame? Like, what is this? Or are they both, like, Mazas, or are they both Dotas? And I was just like, they had to be connected in some way. And I needed that connection. I might have missed something with that. That was my whole thing, because obviously, Omame gets pregnant from Fuka Eri having sex with Tango. So I'm like, they have to be connected somehow for, like, Omame to get pregnant from him having sex with Fuka Eri. Like, they have to be connected somehow. And I'm just like, Also, going off of that, like I said, were they both Mazas or Dotas? Because I think Fuka Eri was a Dota, because from how they always describe Dotas, she was one. Like, who was it? The secretary guy? Tamaru? He brought it up. He was like, did you ever think, like, she was a Dota? And, like, immediately got shut down, and I was like, I totally think, or, like, Komatsu? Was it Komatsu? Whoever he was friends with Tango, who was like, do you think she might have been a Dota, and, like, the Maza got left behind? And I was like, yes! That's exactly what I think happened, because Fuka Eri, like, is exactly like how a Dota would be. That's how they described what a Dota would be. And Tango was immediately like, no, she wasn't. And I was like, yes, she totally was. So that, going off of that, I'm like, was Omame also a Dota? Because, like, yeah, she got pregnant, which I guess Dotas can't do that, So was she like the Maza of Fukaeri, or were they both Dotas? Like, somehow those two are connected, because they just have to be. Also, what the hell was with the baby? Like, the pregnancy thing? Like, we never get an answer to that. Was the baby a Dota? Was the baby, like, an actual baby? Was it actually Tango's baby? Because, like, they just kind of assume it is. Like, was it actually, though? Was it a Dota? Was it an air chrysalis and it was actually her, like, making herself? Or, like, what was it? Like, I just want to know what the hell happened to this baby child thing that she, like, created spontaneously. Like, those are the majority of my questions. If anyone actually has answers to those, I would love to hear what you guys have below, because, like, I kind of formed answers for myself in my head, but I'd love to see what other people think, because, I don't know, this book was so much, and I wish, like, I genuinely would have read, like, 1,000 pages more just to get, like, answer those questions, because, like, Murakami, you always leave me with so many more questions than I need. Okay, and I also want to talk about the ending, because I don't know how I feel about the ending. I don't know if I actually said this in my spoiler-free section, but I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. So, like, I liked all of it, but I had mixed feelings about the ending. Basically, I was just, like, actually halfway through this book when I was, like, updating it on Goodreads, I was like, if this ends as just, like, a love story, I'm gonna be really upset, which it does. It ends, like, all about Amame and Tango getting together and, like, going off and living their lives together, which I appreciated that they went back to regular in 1984, but I was also like, this could have been cooler, you know? That was my thinking on it. This could have been cooler, because, like, just it being a love story kind of made me, like, eh. And also, like, Amame got kind of annoying when the whole love story kind of arc started. Like, yes, it was all the way through the book, but, like, in the last section when it kind of became, like, more of the plot-driven thing of her finding Tango, I got a little bit annoyed with her because, like, basically she gave up everything for, like, a boy, and I was just like, okay. And it was, like, a little obsessive, too. But, I just, like, I don't know, I just don't know how I feel that much about the ending, because I was like, it could have been so much cooler, like, it didn't need to be a love story. But, like, again, overall, I freaking love this book. I think it's a masterpiece. I have put it on my favorites list, but I've said that about a couple of Haruki Murakami books, and then I take them off, but I think this one's gonna stay, because this was so good. It deserves a 5 out of 5 stars. If you don't give it a 5 out of 5 stars, why did you even make it to the end, you know? But anyways, I hope you guys all enjoyed this review video, and definitely tell me all of your theories and all of your stuff down in the comments below. And yes, I really enjoyed this, and yeah. I love you all, and I'll see y'all soon. Bye!